Welcome to our class on Meguilat Esther. We're class number 4, I think. I think 3 or 4. Okay, so maybe 4. Anyways, we are February 5th, and we are verse number 13. I just want to give back like some little information about what we learned and why we're learning the Meguilat Esther. We said the Meguilat Esther is a very crucial element for our generation. You might have several pages that are the same. I don't know exactly how many copies did I give you. So Meguilat Esther is a crucial book of the Torah, and especially for our generation, because we said it was written in a time when it was a transition. First, a transition between two Bet HaMikdash, between the destruction of the first one and the reconstruction of the second one. But especially, it's a transition in time. Hashem is preparing Am Israel, who is not yet called Jewish. The first time that we are called Yehudim is actually in the Megillat Esther. Before that, we're just Bnei Israel, not yet, and Am Israel, but not yet Jewish, the Yehudim. So we said that time in age is very specific because Hashem is trying to help us transition from an era of prophets, the Nevi'im, where we had a very open communication with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was more obvious, even though you could not see him, okay? But he was not hidden. He was not hiding. You needed to get an answer to an issue, to a problem, to a question. You would just go to the prophets. You would just go to the Kohen Gadol, and you would have your answer right there, okay? It was somehow very clear cut, okay? And this is the moment where we are preparing the transition to the era of Da'at Torah, which is a different era. After the destruction of the second temple, which is happening a few centuries after the story we're in now, but it's still like a preparation. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu will leave this world, right? And therefore will hide, let's say, from this world. And therefore, the communication with Hashem will be very different. And it's going to be mesmerizing for this generation. How are they going to be able to connect with HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Imagine from the moment you just go and ask a prophet to the moment where you feel like, well, wow, are we lost? We don't have the prophets anymore. Who can we turn to? And now the people to turn to are those who have the Da'at Torah, which means the knowledge of the Torah, right? So our Rabbanim, our Tzadikim, the Torah, right? Which is the expression of the Ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But Hashem is hidden. And why is that a transitional key, this Megillat Esther? Because Megillat Esther, already in the title, is a paradox. Megillah, we said, comes from legalgel, that means to reveal, and Esther is what is hidden. So the Megillat Esther is teaching us how to understand the new relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's teaching us how to reveal what is hidden. And who is hidden in the Megillat Esther? HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We don't see once the name of Hashem in the entire Megillah. We saw, though, last session, that when we see HaMelech, and not Melech Achashverosh, for instance, Melech only, we're speaking about Hashem. But again, we have to reveal him. We have to understand. It's not obvious. It's not revealed. We have to go and dig for it, okay? There are plenty of ways to understand the Megillah, to approach and to study the Megillah, but definitely what we want at the midrasha is not to remain at the pshat, at the first level of understanding that we probably all know from childhood, right? We know the story. Now we want to understand the hidden story. And we want to understand the hashgacha pratit that there's nothing more coincidental than the story of Meguilat Esther, and yet we see the hand of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in every single detail. There's not one pasuk where we don't see the hand of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that's what we're going to try to reveal together. We are now at verse 13. There's a lot of psukim in Meguilat Esther, and because we're not going to study it for the entire year, so we're going to focus more on certain psukim and certain parts of the Megillah that seem to me important, because right now we're learning how to approach and understand the characters of the Megillah. So for the moment, who did we discover? We discovered Achashverosh. We discovered the kingdom also, which is important, understanding the historical circumstances and environment. And we also discovered Vashti. So you will tell me, okay, Vashti, she's a very small character of the story because she's there only at the very beginning. But her character is important because it helps us understand the rest of the story, okay? And who is really Achashverosh? And today, we're going to learn about a little bit about Haman Arasha. So this learning today, we're going to discover another character, and we're going to understand again better King Achashverosh. So we said King Achashverosh, just now to remind ourselves, he is not a legitimate king. And he suffers from the symptom of, how do you call that again? Illegitimacy, how do you call that? Imposter syndrome, okay? Why? Because he happened to have found randomly, so to say, a big treasure, right? This big treasure enabled him to buy out 127 countries, and he became the emperor, the king of those 127 countries not through battle, not through conquering the countries, but buying, just with his money. Because of this imposter syndrome, he got married with someone who was from a very royal legacy and lineage, which is Vashti. Queen Vashti is actually, we said, the daughter of King Balthazar, okay? Remember how he died? We spoke about that last time. He's obsessed with proving the entire empire that he is legitimate and that he's almighty. And he also needs to make this an empire. When you have 127 countries that go from India to Ethiopia, they don't have a common culture, they don't have a common language, they don't have a lot in common at all. So he organizes those big parties in order to gather all the ambassadors of those countries for them to become one. And we say the first party he organizes was 180 days, right? And it ended on Rosh Hashanah, right? No, sorry, on the third on Rosh Hashanah, on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. And then he's going to organize another party for the people of Shushan, right? And for the Jews, and where he's going to invite the Jews of Shushan. Why? Because we said he in his megalomania, he decided that he needed to show the world that he was the more powerful king. He made a replica of King Shlomo HaMelech's throne, right? And he made it in Shushan. That's why he transported the capital of his empire from Babylon to Shushan. And now he wants to prove Shushan that he is this wonderful king. He's going to throw a party that is going to last for 7 days. That's what we saw last time. The 7th day is actually Shabbat, and it's actually Yom Kippur. And therefore, what happens? Thank God, the Jews are not present on that last day. But for the rest of the week, they are present, and the chief rabbi, so to say, like the leader of the Jewish community, is actually Mordechai HaYehudi, right? And he is also present to make sure to be present in order to give like to be how do you call, like a shomer, like a chaperone, like a chaperone. People would not sin that much, knowing that the leader of the community is present, right? Now we saw that Vashti also threw a party, right? Because it's been 2 weeks, so I'm just summarizing a little bit what we saw. She also threw a party. Her party is a totally different party. She's not giving a party outside in the garden like King Achashverosh. She's throwing a party for women inside of her house. Why? Because she is not in love with her dear husband, the king. She sees that he's trying to use her to gain legitimacy, and she doesn't want that to happen. So what does she say at the end? Like he is the one who ended the empire of her father, right? The Babylonian Empire, to settle the Persian Empire, and therefore she's going to let all the women in, see the backstage and the inside and the private places of their house, in order for the people to think, oh, they're just normal people. They have bathrooms, they have restrooms, they have a bed. Oh, they have separate beds, they have separate bedrooms. Maybe they don't get along so well. Maybe this, maybe that. Okay, she is giving them a tour of a regular family because she wants to desacralize the title of king that he has, when he is trying to set up and to confirm his legitimacy. So it's very interesting that they're working on a different step. But at that moment, we said last week that King Achashverosh is actually going to call, on the 7th day, he's going to call Queen Vashti. Queen Vashti, I need you to come and show the world of Shushan, right? All the very powerful people, the nobles of the city, that not only I am a wonderful and strong king, but I have a beautiful queen. And I want them to see the queen in her most simple way. So come naked with a crown on your head. And what does she do? She refuses to do so. So we're going to today see what are the consequences of that refusal. It's very important to understand, to replace ourselves, that we are not in 2025 in Miami, where people walk in the streets half naked. We are in Persia, Iran. Okay? Maybe today Iran is as like you wouldn't see someone naked in Iran today either, right? Imagine 3,000 years ago. You wouldn't see that happen. Imagine the life of a woman in that times in Shushan. Women were said to be inside of the house. They would live amongst women, first of all. Amen. They would live amongst women. They would have like a very private life, and they would not go in the streets. I'm going to give you an example. My grandparents were from Algeria. They were born in the very early 20th century, and yet my grandmother would not go in the marketplace, because that women would not go to a marketplace. You would not go with a lot of people, of men around. Like my grandfather would go to the market and would bring back the fruit, or they had like some people who would come to the house with the fruits, and they would choose from their house. But this was only 100 years ago. We're speaking about 3,000 years ago. How even more, how do we say that? How would you say, like, pudique? Modest and reserved would women be? Being exposed in the outside world, in the public world, would be something very humiliating for them. So imagine Imagine what is the king Ahasuerus asking his wife. Come.
He did.
Because he was advised. He was very drunk. 187 days of festivity. Mamma mia.
Yeah.
Oh, I think she went to pick up the food. Thank you. 11:00. Thank you so much. Toda.
He was under the influence and of his
And
advisors.
Of the advisors. We're going to see today the advisors. Merci beaucoup. We're going to see also today the advisors. It's crazy. Okay. But imagine the offense for a queen, like someone from the regular population would not go out in the streets. So imagine a queen going out in front of all the nobles of the city naked. It was for sure a no-no situation. It was humiliating. She was from a very royal descendants. She would not do it as a queen. She would not do it as a woman. Why do I say those two titles? Because we see that the text of the Megillah refers to her in a code. Sometimes it's Queen Vashti, right? And in that moment, we consider her with her title. She's brought up here as a queen with respect to her lineage. And sometimes she's Vashti the queen. And in that moment, she's considered as the wife, as the woman, not with her royal title. So now that we are back to that, let's go. I'm going to share with our dear friends on Zoom the text of the Megillah. Those of you who have it, we are, okay, so we saw Pasuk 12 last week, but Queen Vashti refused to come at the king's command conveyed by the eunuchs. So again, like it's interesting to see that she was supposed to be conveyed by eunuchs. Eunuchs were men that were emasculated. You know that? Yeah? Okay. No, they were emasculated because they didn't want them to be tempted by the women. But basically, they were, yeah, in harems. I think it's still like that today. But basically, like they were guards. They were guards. So imagine how terrible would have been like for a queen to be brought by guards, like a prisoner or something, like in the like, it doesn't make any sense. Okay, he sent his fur burned with him. Okay, now so that's why we saw last week. Now anybody wants to 13 in both? You want to read in Hebrew and then we'll English? Yeah. Yes. So in English, anybody wants to read in English? Go.
Then he halted the learned procedure, for it was the royal practice to turn to all who were versed in.
Okay, so in C, so he has a procedure, but I'm working with the Malbim. So the Malbim is a commentator from the 19th century, and he's many different texts of the Torah, but in the Megillah, he has to study the text that is very interesting. He asks questions. Here he says his translation is this one, that the king say to the wise men times, because he translates two words, that the matter be brought those who knew the practice. So Ahasuerus is going to ask the wise men who knew the times. So we're going to ask, who are those who knew the times? What does it mean, right? That the matter of the king, so his issue right now, right? This one that Vashti didn't want to, and to the or should be brought not before people who the times, we're going to see who they are, but those who knew the practice, and we're going to see what it reveals about Achashverosh. Who are those who the practice, and we're also going to ask ourselves, does Achashverosh act what should be done with Vashti according to practice rather than according to it? The Mabim, he uses something very interesting. He said, no, in a kingdom, when the judge, since she didn't come, she's going to be judged, right? We know the end of the story. We know that she's going to be killed. But what is interesting is to know how she's going to be killed. And what did Achashverosh do? Did he wanted her to be killed? Did he not want her to be killed? So we're going to see that, okay? To understand Achashverosh, because again, now we try to understand the characters in order to understand better the most important part of the plot, right? Which is with Esther Amalka afterwards. But in order to understand what's going on in the story of Esther Amalka and in her battle for her nation, right? We have to understand very well who is Achashverosh. So that's why we're really spending a little bit more time on that. So imagine you are in an emperor, in an empire, sorry, and the king is going to judge someone for disobeying. We can imagine that there are different levels of judgment. It's not the same if, let's say, like a shepherd disobeyed the king when the king was in the field, for instance, right? Or if a queen disobeyed the king, or if a minister disobeyed the king, or even if a shepherd disobeyed the king when the king is in his palace. Why? Because imagine a king in a field. Maybe the shepherd didn't even know that it was really the king, right? But if the shepherd disobeys the king when he's in the palace, ooh, what chutzpah, right? It's not the same. But if we're speaking about someone who has a title that is equal, so to say, to the king, like it is the case here, the queen, and they are in their house, in their palace, in a private or not private setting. This is also going to be influential to the judgment. Should she be judged the same way? It's true. At the end, like she has a title that is equal to the king. Is she doing it when the king is reigning over the people, or is it in a private setting? Okay, so it's important to understand that there are several levels of judgment, right? And Achashverosh, through that verse, we're going to discover that he doesn't want to cause harm to Vashti at all. What is he saying? Okay, we have to judge. I know. But you know what? He's turning to the judges who judge the affairs of the royal family, right? Who are those who knew the time. So when we said the experts who knew the time, we're referring to those judges who judge cases of the royalty, okay? Very important cases that are very strict with what happened. It's a public case, and it involves the royal situation and the royal crown, right? So they are very strict. But he's telling them, you know what? She's my wife. We shouldn't judge her as someone who offended the crown, because that's not the crown that she wanted to offend. Really, she's my wife. We have the same title. So it's, so to say, a problem between husband and wife. So let's judge her with whom? Those experts, those judges who knew the practice and law. So practice and law are the judges who deal with regular affairs of regular people. And those who knew the times were the judges who would judge all the royalty affair, the affair of the kingdom, right? He doesn't want her to be considered guilty of something against the crown because he doesn't want her to die, to be condemned. He loves her. And she also represents, as we said, like the crown. He doesn't want that to happen to her, sorry. So he's going to the judges and tell them, listen, like, I know you want to take over in this situation because it's me. I'm the king. But you know what? Let's pass the file to the practice in law, to those who deal with regular affairs, because I don't want her to face death penalty. He doesn't say that, but that's what it means. I want her to be able to go out with like a little something, like a little slap on her face or something like that, like something smaller, right? So here we see that Achashverosh really doesn't want her to be punished, right? Now let's go to verse 14. Anybody wants to read? In English, it's fine. We don't need to read in Hebrew. You don't have it? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm going to give you the. Okay, let me see. 14 is Ve'akarov. His closest advisors were Karshena, Shetar, Admata, Tarshish, Meres, Marsena, and Memuchan, the 7 ministers of Persia and also of Media, who had access to the royal presence and occupied the first place in the kingdom. So it's interesting because we know that in the Torah and also obviously even in the Megillah, there are no lost words. Why do we need to know all those names of those 7 advisors? Okay, it's interesting, but so it's very interesting that they give them names, the detail of the names, instead of just saying, okay, so his closest advisors, the 7 ministers of Persia and Media, had access to the royal presence and occupied the first place in the kingdom. Here they are giving us an important message. It's a verse, right, where we have a lot of details of their names. We know that there are 7. We know that there are ministers not only of Persia, but also of Media, right? So they are high-ranked ministers, and they had access to the royal presence, meaning that they were there all the time. They know their life, right? They're used to seeing the king and the queen. And they occupied the first place in the kingdom, meaning that not only they were high-ranked, but they were really like, they knew them. And why did Achashverosh comes to them in particular, says the Malbim? Because, again, he wants to defend his wife. He doesn't want her to be punished. So he goes to them and he says, you know what? You know me well. You know my life. You will know how to interpret my face. If I say like that, you will know what it means. If I say like that, you will know what it means. You're not just regular judges. Like, you know me well. And you know how it is between my wife and I, right? So you will be probably more lenient with judging. You will understand in front of everyone when I make that face that I want mercy on her. So that's why he chooses those advisors in particular. That's what the Malbim says. Yes. Okay. So let me just see if I don't miss anything here. Oh, something interesting. We discover a very important person, Memuchan. Memuchan is one of the advisors, but he's not anyone. We're going to see that Memuchan is going to push the king, really influence the king. He is very influential on the king, and Memuchan is actually, again, says Rashi, like a disguise for somebody else. Guess who? Haman HaRasha. Rashi says that Memuchan is actually a way to present Haman HaRasha. Why? First, because Memuchan can be translated as prepared or ready. He's prepared. He's ready for his mission. He's here to really influence the king Achashverosh, and we're going to see in which way. So it's very interesting to see that.
Is it also not the first time we hear his name in the?
No, a little bit later. Yeah,
again, right?
We're going to hear it under the name Haman.
No, but Memuchan, not another time? Is this the first time? We hear
Yes,
Memuchan?
in this book, yes. Rashi says that, yeah. He's a hidden way to present Haman. And it's important because now we're discovering the second important character of the Megillah, Haman. And we're going to see he's memuchan, he's prepared. Now it doesn't mean so much, but you're going to see that when we're going to speak about the strategy of his strategy to destroy the Jewish people, we understand that from the beginning of the Megillah, we're only verse 14, he's already prepared for that mission. Even now, don't think that is random. Even now, it's a preparation for what's going on after. Because of him, because of his readiness, because he's ready and prepared for his mission to destroy the Jewish people, Vashti is going to be killed, and Hadassah, who is actually Esther, the future Esther Malka, will be chosen. So this is a very important introduction. We introduce Haman as someone who is prepared. He has a plan. Let's see what the plan is now. Verse 15. Okay, so verse 15. Okay, I'm going to read. Oh, you want to read? No? As you wish. כדת מה לעשות?
כדת מה לעשות במלכה ושתי, על אשר לא עשתה את מאמר המלך אחשוורוש ביד הסריסים.
So, what, he asked, shall be done according to law. So again, instead of bringing her back to the little affairs, he said, what should be done according to law, right? To Queen Vashti for failing to obey, to command. And then he says, Hamelech Achashverosh, not Achashverosh Hamelech, again, Hamelech Achashverosh. Hey, you're trying to bring it down to a judgment between two people, between a husband and a wife? Hamelech Achashverosh was touched, was disobeyed. We have to bring it up to the how you call that, the very big judge, tribunal, right?
And this is asked by Memuchan.
Yes, Memuchan, exactly. Hi, Sharon, how are you? Okay, so let's see what the Malbim says on this one. To decide according to practice what should be done with Queen Vashti for not performing the binding. So white convey, yeah, okay, so let's go to the 16. Sorry. So sorry, that was said by the king. And now verse 16, and Memuchan replied in front of the king and the other officials, not only has Vashti, the queen, wronged the king, but also all the officials and all the people in all the provinces of King Achashverosh. He's throwing oil on the fire, mamash, right? So it's very interesting. First of all, we see that again, he's trying to take her out of her crown, right? He doesn't want her to be considered as the queen. He says, Vashti the queen. He replaces her as the person Vashti, not in her title of royalty, to refute the argument of leniency of the king, right? So the Malbim asked, why all the official and all the people? Why did she offended all the official and all the people? If the concern is that, okay, so that's very interesting. If the concern is that wives will demeanor their husbands, why two groups? Because we said King Achashverosh is trying to bring it down to a problem of Shalom Bayit, right? Between the king and the queen, two regular people. Memuchan, who is said to be Aman, tells, whoa, wait a second. So you're saying that this is a problem between a husband and a wife? Then she didn't offend only the king, but then she offended the entire government and the entire people. Why? Because if she disobeyed her husband and she is acquitted for that, what about us? And again, if Memuchan is really Haman, we'll remember that who deals in his house, who rules the world in his house? His wife. Exactly. So if his wife he has problem of Shalom Bayit with her, she's ruling over him. And now we're going to say to the entire empire, it's okay, look, even the queen did that, right? And she was acquitted. Then what is in my power to regain my masculinity and my authority in my house? So again, we have to remember, we are 3,000 years ago in Persia. Like we're not in 2025 in Western world where women want equality with their husbands and so on. It was very different. He said, wait, like, okay, maybe the government will know. The people from the government who were invited at that party will know because they saw that, like the women from the government will not think, they will know that it was really because he asked her to do something that was not appropriate. But the rest of the population, they will just hear, you know what? The queen disobeyed the king as his wife because you judged her as that. And there was no consequences. So let's do it all together. Let's rebel against our husbands, right? So he's bringing it like that. Now, verse 17. For this deed of the queen will go out to all women and will cause them to hold their husbands in contempt, saying that even King Achashverosh told Vashti the queen. So again, King Achashverosh, the king, you, my dear king, Vashti the queen, he puts her down, okay? To be brought before him, but she did not come, right? So again, Memuchan, alias aka Haman, is trying to really accuse and to blame Vashti's crime would impact all the people, ruining marriages throughout the empire. Are you kidding me? We cannot judge her favorably, okay? And then verse 18, I'm trying to go a little bit fast, I'm sorry, just so that we finish before 11:20, Bezrat Hashem. This very day, the wives of the officials of Persia and Media who heard the queen's response will speak to all the king's officials, causing much contempt and fury. So why this very day, asked the Malbim, what will their wives say and why write contempt and fury? And the Malbim explains, the Memuchan points out now that all the official wives were present at the banquet, they heard, and again, he's thinking about himself. It's going to go on my head, okay? So we saw that. Let's go a little bit further. So basically, he's going to really try to take her down and to try to have her be judged by the people who judge affairs of the crown. And basically, he is the one who is going to leave no other choice to the king. King Ahasuerus doesn't have, he's not that type of person that has so much self-confidence that he's going at the end to, especially like he's all drunk, so we're not even in a better situation. But so he's really influenceable. And now he's put in the corner. There's no way for him to escape. He has to accept to judge his wife, the queen, in a very strong way. And this is how Memucan will get the king to not only judge his wife, but then we'll see in verse 20, it says, then when the king's decree, which he will proclaim, which is a very great one, will be known throughout the whole kingdom, wives will give honor to their husbands from the greatest to the smallest. What is he doing? He's selling and comforting the king in his needs for power and recognition. But in reality, again, he's following his own agenda, right? And this is Haman. Verse 21 says, this reply pleased the king, Ahasuerus, king. He doesn't say Ahasuerus, sorry, I added it. This reply pleased the king and the officials, and the king followed Memucan's suggestion. He got him to follow what he wanted. Is it pleasant to the king to feel powerful and to have absolute authority? Yes. We understand now that Ahasuerus is really manipulated by Memucan, aka Haman. We're going to see that in the future of our study also. And now we see that not only Haman Memucan managed to get him to judge her and to have her killed, but he managed something else. He managed to have the king sign a decree that from now on, in the entire empire, men will rule over their women, okay? Which is crazy. They should not have anything to say. And not only that, but something very interesting that the Malbim focuses on. He says that not only that, but you know, since it was an empire made of very different cultures, very different countries, it was very common that people would get married with people with spouses who didn't share the same language, right? And the decree of the king, we're not reading it now, but you can read it in the Meguilat if you want. You'll see in the verses to come. Emphasizes on the fact that from now on, not only men will rule over their spouse, their wives, but their wives will only be allowed to use the language of their husband. So imagine here, we know a lot of couples who have like one that speak French, the other one that speaks Spanish or English and Spanish, right? It's not easy to speak in a language that is not yours. You're not able to express yourself the same way. So you're weaker, right? So not only now the men dominate their wives and they're not allowed to say anything about it or to disobey their husbands. It's a decree from the king, but they are not allowed to use their own language to speak with their husbands. At home now, the official language is the language of the husband. So basically, it's very tough for the woman, very difficult. And why? Obviously, because this is the case in the house of Haman. His wife is now obligated to shut her mouth by decree of the king, right? And not only that, but she will have to speak to him and to express herself now in his language, which also brings her to a lower position. So we see that through all this, he, Haman, managed to manipulate the king and not only kill Vashti, have Vashti through the death penalty, but also organize a huge change in the entire empire, right? That will impact all the households. So here we are. We see now already at this verse, we see how manipulative, influential, and strategic is Haman. So now we know two of those characters. Next week, Bezrat Hashem, we will speak about Hadassah, about Queen Esther. We will start learning about her, Bezrat Hashem, and we will go a little bit forward in the text.
I didn't know that Esther name was
Hadassah. Her real name is Hadassah. When she becomes Esther, is because she has to hide her identity as a Jew. Exactly.
My sister's name is Adas Esther. Not Adassa, Adas.
Adas Esther.
Wow. Beautiful. My daughter said, Mama, you look